Hey, this is Trey Gunn, and we're here talking about Gig Performer. Gig Performer is a VST and audio unit plugin host. I run it on the Mac, and it's my live rig and my studio rig. I don't need any analog gear at all except for my instrument. And all you need for to get all the sounds that I use is Gig Performer, a couple of plugins, and an audio interface, and then some kind of MIDI controller. My MIDI controller setup is pretty over the top, but it doesn't have to be over the top. I pretty much switched to Gig Performer almost 100% of the time now from other outboard guitar rigs, guitar gear, pedals. I don't need to use any of that stuff now. I can emulate it all in Gig Performer and have way more control. And one of the advantages of Gig Performer is that you're able to run your plugins. It doesn't run like a mixer board where you put your plugins in a chain. You can stack them and run them in parallel. So I'll have multiple guitar amps running in parallel and crossfade between them, and different kinds of effects running in parallel. So switching over to Gig Performer is relatively easy. You have to know what plugins you want to use. That's the kind of smallest hurdle to get over, because there's so many different plugins out there, which is positive and a little bit more work. But once you've figured out, like, I like this guitar amp simulator, I like this reverb, this delay, and I'll give you some exact examples of what I think is great here later. But the ease of just going over here and drawing a line from my guitar amp to my delay to the output, and then running the controller to change the delay time, it's fantastic. You just can't do this kind of thing with pedals, to my knowledge. So it's the facility that I have now with Gig Performer compared to running pedals is ridiculous. Some of the great options that Gig Performer gives you is you're able to switch from complicated patches to other complicated patches with absolutely no sound glitches at all. Completely crossfades down to nothing, and the switch time is unbelievably fast. So I can have 3 different guitar amps, a bass amp, several delays, phasers, flangers, EQs, compressors, and then I can switch to a patch where there's something totally different happening. 1 amp, bass amp is direct, 1 amp on the guitar side, 3 different kinds of delays, a different kind of mixer board. Then I can just hit another button and crossfade to a totally different patch. And that's obviously impossible with an analog pedal board. It's dead silent. The latency is to the degree that I can't feel it anymore. I think I'm running 4 milliseconds. So these are amazing, amazing leaps that they've made with Gig Performer. So one of the other advantages that works for me personally with Gig Performer is my instrument is stereo, so I have bass strings and guitar strings, so I'm running 2 different rigs basically at the same time inside a Gig Performer. I've got a bass chain, and then I've got a guitar chain. The bass chain could still have delays, bass amps, phasers. The guitar chain could have 2 or 3, 4, 5 different guitar amps running in parallel that I can crossfade and run into delays. With one of my performance projects, the security project, we have 3 different folks using Gig Performer on stage. I'm using it with my rig for the bass side and the guitar side. Our keyboard player, David Jamison, who's one of the key developers of the software, he uses it for his keyboard rig, running samples, doing all sorts of crazy patches and sound manipulation. And then even our front of house sound man, Robert Fraza, is using it in the show. He's using delays and reverbs that he makes a loop in the mixer board system, sending out from the mixer board to gig performer and bringing it back in. He's controlling touch tempos for each song with it. He's manipulating reverbs, he's changing patches, and we're all in control of our units separately, and we're all running it on our own laptops, but there's a lot of gig performer going on in the security project.